During dinner with my parents, she said, "I'm just waiting for him to mature, emotionally and financially." My dad asked what she meant. She said, "Well, look at this restaurant." I excused myself, paid the bill, and left. She had to call her dad for a ride. I, 32M, never thought a single dinner would be the end of everything. But sometimes you don't need a massive explosion to end a relationship. Sometimes all it takes is one sentence spoken with casual cruelty to realize you've been blind for 3 years. My girlfriend and I had been together since we met at a mutual friend's birthday party. She was stunning, charming, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. For the first year, everything felt perfect. We moved in together after 18 months, and I genuinely believed we were building towards something permanent. Marriage had been discussed, vaguely, the way couples do when they're testing the waters. My parents had been asking to meet her properly for months. We'd done the quick introductions at family gatherings, but never a real sit-down dinner. My mom specifically requested we do something nice, somewhere we could all talk and get to know each other better. I suggested a place downtown that I'd been to a few times, a cozy Italian spot with excellent food and reasonable prices. Nothing fancy, but nice enough for a family dinner. She seemed off from the moment I mentioned the restaurant. Asked if we couldn't go somewhere better, somewhere more upscale. I reminded her that my parents were treating us, and that this wasn't about impressing anyone, just about spending time together. She dropped it, but I could feel her disappointment radiating through the apartment for the next 2 days. The night of the dinner, she took forever getting ready. I watched her change outfits 3 times, each one more elaborate than the last. When I asked if she was okay, she said she was fine, just wanted to make a good impression. I thought it was sweet, if a little excessive. We arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes late. My parents were already seated, and my mom's face lit up when she saw us walking in. Dad stood to shake my hand and hug her. They were warm, welcoming, exactly as I knew they'd be. We settled into our seats, and I felt myself start to relax. Maybe I'd been worried over nothing. The first 30 minutes went well enough. Mom asked about her job, and she talked about the marketing firm where she worked. Dad shared some stories about his recent retirement and the woodworking projects he'd started. The conversation flowed naturally, and I started to think this would be a nice evening after all. Then my girlfriend started making comments. Small things at first. She mentioned how quaint the restaurant was, with just enough emphasis on quaint to make it sound like an insult. She studied the menu with this pinched expression, like she was searching for something that met her standards. When the waiter came by, she ordered the most expensive item without looking at the prices, then added an appetizer and asked about their wine list. My mom ordered a simple pasta dish. Dad got chicken parmesan. I went with lasagna. Nothing extravagant, just good food. My girlfriend made a small noise when she heard their orders, something between a sigh and a laugh. My dad caught it, but didn't say anything. The food came, and we continued talking. My parents asked about our apartment, about our life together. Mom wanted to know if we were happy, if we had everything we needed. I told her we were doing great, which I believed at the time. My girlfriend smiled and nodded, but didn't contribute much to that part of the conversation. Then Dad asked her about us. About our future. Where did she see things going? It was a reasonable question from a father trying to understand his son's relationship. She took a sip of her wine, set it down carefully, and said something that made my blood run cold. She said she was just waiting for me to mature, emotionally and financially. Said it casually, like she was discussing the weather. My parents went quiet. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Dad's expression shifted into something I'd rarely seen, a kind of controlled anger that made his jaw tight. He asked her what she meant by that. His voice was level, but there was steel underneath it. She gestured around the restaurant with her wine glass. Told him to just look at this place. Said it like the restaurant itself was evidence of my inadequacy. Explained that she was hoping I'd eventually want nicer things, develop better taste, be more ambitious about money. That she was giving me time to grow up and match her standards. The table went silent. I could hear other diners talking around us, the clinking of silverware, someone laughing at the bar. But at our table, nobody moved. My mom was staring at her plate. Dad was looking at me, waiting to see what I'd do. Something crystallized in that moment. 3 years of small comments, of subtle put-downs, of her comparing me to her friends' boyfriends who made more money or had better jobs or drove nicer cars. I'd brushed it all off as jokes, as her just having high standards. But sitting there, watching her casually insult me in front of my parents while eating a meal they were paying for, I finally understood what I'd been refusing to see. I wasn't her partner. I was her project, her fixer-upper, someone she was tolerating until I became what she actually wanted. I excused myself from the table, told them I needed to use the restroom. My girlfriend barely looked up from her salmon. I walked past the bathrooms, straight to the front, and found our waiter. Asked for the check. He seemed confused since we weren't finished eating, but I insisted. Paid for the entire meal in cash, left a generous tip, and told him to let the table know that everything was settled. Then I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. My phone started ringing before I even made it home. I ignored it. By the time I pulled into our apartment building parking lot, I had 7 missed calls from her and 3 from my mom. I went inside, grabbed 2 suitcases from the closet, and started packing her things. I wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. I was calm, methodical even. Clothes went into one suitcase, toiletries and shoes into another. Her laptop, her jewelry, her books. I packed it all neatly, zipped the bags, and set them by the door. My phone kept buzzing. Text messages now, asking where I was, what was wrong, why I'd left. Then her tone shifted. She started demanding I come back to the restaurant. Said I was embarrassing her. That my parents probably thought she was awful now, and this was all my fault for choosing such a cheap place to begin with. I texted her once. Told her to call her dad for a ride because I wasn't coming back. That her bags would be by the door when she got home, and she had 1 week to find a new place to live. She called immediately. I let it ring through to voicemail. She called again. And again. I turned my phone off. An hour later, my mom called the apartment landline. I almost didn't answer, but knew she'd just worry if I didn't. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, better than fine actually. She was quiet for a moment, then said that Dad had paid for dessert and they'd made sure she got in touch with someone to pick her up. That she'd called her father and he'd come to get her. Mom's voice was gentle but firm when she told me that what my girlfriend had said was unacceptable and that they supported whatever decision I made. I thanked her, told her I loved her. She made me promise to call tomorrow and then hung up. The apartment felt different with her stuff packed up. Lighter somehow. I sat on the couch and realized I'd been holding my breath for 3 years. Walking on eggshells in my own relationship, trying to be enough for someone who would never think I was enough. She came home around midnight. I heard her key in the lock, heard her see the suitcases. She came into the living room where I was sitting, and her face was a storm. Asked what I thought I was doing. Demanded to know why I'd humiliated her like that. I asked if she understood what she'd said. If she realized how insulting it was to tell my parents, to my face, that she was waiting for me to be good enough for her. She tried to backtrack then, said I was overreacting, that it came out wrong. That she just meant she wanted me to be more ambitious, to want more out of life. I told her I wanted plenty out of life, just nothing she could give me. That I wanted a partner who respected me, who didn't see me as a renovation project. Someone who didn't measure my worth by restaurant choices and salary figures. She shifted tactics, started crying, saying she loved me, that we could work through this, that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But I'd seen her face when she said it. The casual dismissiveness. The way she'd looked around that restaurant like it was beneath her, like I was beneath her. I told her the week stood. She had 7 days to find somewhere else to live. We were done. She left that night, took her suitcases, and called a friend to pick her up. Slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. Update 1. The first few days were strange. She texted constantly, alternating between apologetic and angry. Told me I was throwing away 3 years over a misunderstanding. That I was being immature, which was almost funny given her comment about me needing to mature. I didn't respond to any of it. My parents called every day to check in. Mom kept asking if I needed anything, if I wanted to come stay with them for a while. I appreciated it, but told her I was okay. Dad said something that stuck with me. He said that respect was the foundation of everything, and without it, love was just a word people used to keep you around. She came by on the 3rd day with her mother. I'd expected this. Her mom had always been cold, the type who measured everything by appearances and status. She barely looked at me as she swept through the apartment, directing her daughter to grab things I'd missed. Before they left, her mother made a point of telling me I'd regret this. That her daughter could do much better anyway, and I was lucky she'd stayed as long as she did. I held the door open and waited for them to leave. Didn't argue, didn't defend myself. Just waited. When they were gone, I changed the locks. Work friends started asking questions. We'd been together long enough that people knew us as a unit. I kept it simple, said we'd broken up and I didn't want to discuss it. Most people respected that. A few mutual friends reached out, trying to get the full story. I told them the same thing. We'd grown apart. It wasn't working anymore. I wasn't interested in turning it into gossip. But apparently she was. I started hearing things through the grapevine. She was telling people I'd abandoned her at a restaurant, that I'd embarrassed her in front of my family because I was insecure about money, that she tried to encourage me to be more ambitious and I'd blown up our relationship over it. Her version was spreading, and people who didn't know me well were starting to believe it. I got a message from one of her work friends, someone I'd met a handful of times, asking me how I could do that to her. Just leave her stranded with my parents. I didn't defend myself publicly, didn't post anything on social media, or send out mass messages explaining my side. But when people asked me directly, in person, I told them the truth. Told them exactly what she'd said, word for word. Most people were shocked. Several admitted they'd heard similar comments from her about me before, little cutting remarks they'd thought were just her sense of humor. Update 2. She moved out fully by the end of the week. Came by with 2 friends while I was at work and cleared out the last of her things. Left her key on the kitchen counter with a note that said I'd be sorry someday, that I'd realize what I'd given up, and by then it would be too late. I threw the note away and felt nothing but relief. My life started settling into a new normal. I'd forgotten what it felt like to exist without constant criticism. I could go to a casual restaurant without commentary, could wear comfortable clothes on weekends without hearing about how I needed to dress better, could make financial decisions without someone questioning my priorities. About 3 weeks after the breakup, I ran into her at a coffee shop downtown. She was with someone, a guy in an expensive suit who looked like he'd walked out of a luxury car commercial. She saw me, made sure I saw them, and laughed loudly at something he said while touching his arm. I ordered my coffee and left. Felt nothing. No jealousy, no regret. If anything, I felt bad for the guy. Wondered how long it would take before she started waiting for him to mature too. Before his best wasn't good enough anymore. My friends rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Guys I hadn't seen in months started reaching out, inviting me to things, checking in. They admitted they'd never liked her much, thought she was too critical, too focused on status. They'd kept quiet because I'd seemed happy, but now they were relieved I'd gotten out. Mom and Dad invited me over for dinner a month after everything happened. We went to the same Italian restaurant, sat at the same table. Mom held my hand and told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Dad said I deserved someone who saw my worth, not my potential as a bank account. We had a great evening. The food tasted better than I remembered. Update 3. 3 months out, I'm doing better than I have in years. I got a promotion at work, something I'd been working toward but never quite achieved. Funny how much easier it is to focus on career advancement when you're not constantly defending your current position to someone who thinks it isn't good enough. I started dating again, nothing serious yet. Just meeting people, enjoying conversations, remembering what it's like to be with someone who isn't keeping score. Went on a date with a teacher I met through friends. We went to a pizza place with plastic chairs and paper plates. She said it reminded her of this place she used to go in college, and we spent 2 hours talking about everything and nothing. No comments about ambition. No measuring my worth by the venue. I'm not rushing into anything. Taking my time. Learning to trust my instincts again. I heard through mutual friends that she's still with the guy from the coffee shop. They're apparently getting serious. Good for her. I genuinely hope she found what she was looking for. Hope he makes enough money, has enough ambition, takes her to nice enough restaurants. Hope she never looks at him the way she looked at that Italian place, like it represented everything wrong with her life. I think about that dinner sometimes. Wonder if I would have stayed if it hadn't happened. If I would have kept trying to be enough for someone who was never going to be satisfied. Probably. I was in deep enough that I'd stopped seeing the pattern, stopped recognizing the constant criticism as abuse. That one moment of clarity, sitting at a table with my parents while she casually dissected my inadequacies, saved me years of misery. Sometimes the worst moments turn out to be gifts. Dad was right about respect. Without it, love is just a word people use to keep you around. I'd been kept around long enough. Now I was free, and freedom felt a lot like sitting in a modest Italian restaurant with people who loved me exactly as I was. That was worth more than anything she'd been waiting for me to become.